Okay, so we are going to start a brand new chapter. So our DQ was, where does an offspring get their traits? And so I accepted animals like their DNA, their chromosomes, their parents. And so we started off with lecture discussing characteristics that you can see in this picture that this girl has. And so, just off the top of my head, like, okay, I can see that she is a girl, that she has red curly hair, that she wears glasses. She has a book in her hand, so I'm just going to assume maybe she knows how to read. I mean, she's in the middle of it, so I'm going to say, she can read. Looks like she's wearing earrings. She has, let's see, I already said glasses. If I zoom in here, I don't know. Usually red curly hair, they have freckles. But these are just some traits, okay? Now, of the ones that we just listed, which ones do you think she got directly from her parents? Okay, directly from her parents. Let me get my highlighter here. All right, so girl, I mean, your parents, specifically your father, determines the sex of the offspring. Red curly hair, those are definitely traits, characteristics that you inherit, that you get from your parents. Glasses, no, not necessarily. Okay, you don't come out of the womb wearing glasses. So this is something that she acquired in her life. She can read. That is also an acquired trait. Earrings, that is also an acquired trait. That's something that she picked up later on in her life, not at birth. So this chapter is all about genetics, okay, heredity. How do traits get passed from parents to offspring? So this first lesson is all about a man named Gregor Mendel and his experiments specifically with pea plants. So organisms, like you, have a unique combination of characteristics known as traits, okay, hair color, eye color, skin color, height, hitchhiker thumb, straight thumb. Those are all traits. And you can classify traits as inherited, which means that they are passed down from the parents, or acquired, which means that you developed or learned them during your life. So like getting your ears pierced, that's an acquired trait. Learning how to read. I would say wearing glasses. I mean, yes, there are some people that are born, that myopic or nearsighted, farsighted. But your environment can also shape that factor. So acquired traits tend to result from interaction with that environment, your environment. Take a look at this picture right here. If a father works out as a bodybuilder for many years, what are the chances his offspring will inherit strong muscles? The answer is 0. Okay? This is something that this individual has worked on for a period of time. They have acquired that trait, either by, lifting extremely heavy weights or maybe some other use that I'm not going to say in this video. But that there's, just because he's beefy and muscular doesn't mean that his offspring will inherit those same strong muscles. All right, so some early ideas about heredity is that people believed traits were blended, okay? That you are a mixture of your parents. It's more easy to describe it in plants. So if I have a red flower parent and a white flower parent and I cross them together, well, blended means that the offspring should be pink, because it's like the traits blended together. And Gregor Mendel, this Austrian monk, actually kind of disproved that. Okay, so some key terms here: heredity, the passing of traits from parents to offspring. Gregor Mendel is the man responsible for providing evidence that traits don't blend. Okay, he actually shows how traits are inherited. And so when you study how those traits are inherited, how they're passed on from parents to offspring, you've actually have developed a new field called genetics. So Gregor Mendel, what he did is he used pea plants. Why in the world did he use pea plants? 3 big reasons. Number 1, they reproduce very quickly. Okay, we're talking a couple of days here. okay, like for it to germinate, and then it's got to mature, and then, you know, start the whole process. So he can get through a round in a couple of weeks. They have easily observed traits. So, you know, you could tell if it was a purple flowered pea plant or a white flowered pea plant or a yellow seed or a green seed, wrinkle seed, round seed, tall versus short. So they're traits that you could easily define. And this is probably the most important, the experimenter could control which pairs of plants reproduced. So Gregor Mendel, Austrian monk on a monastery, performed these experiments in his garden. Now, how did he get there? How did he become a monk? Well, he actually wanted to be a teacher, but he suffered from test anxiety. He couldn't pass the examinations to become a math teacher. He's really into math and science. So he goes to the monastery and decides to carry on his own experiments, you know, because he's just someone that just wants to learn everything around him. So he's like, you know what, I'm going to study how these traits in pea plants get passed from parent to offspring. So Gregor Mendel could control which plants pollinated with other plants. And I'm just going to see if I have a picture here. No, I don't. Okay. So when a true breeding plant, okay, self-pollinates, it always produces offspring with traits that match the parent. So true breeding is like the term purebred. Okay? If you take that purebred purple pea plant and you cross it with another purebred purple pea plant, you're going to get 100% purple flowered pea plant. That's also purebred. Same thing if you took white purebred, cross it with white purebred, you get white flowered purebred plants. When he cross-pollinated them, he could control which pea plants could cross-pollinate. So when I did this, we read out of the book and talked about the figure. So I'm actually going to show you a picture of how this is done. Here we go. This looks like a good picture. I'm just going to add a new slide here. Okay, back to full screen. So this is a mature flower. Every flower has a male and female reproductive part. Okay, so the female reproductive part is right here in the center. We have the stigma and then the stalk called the style that goes down to the eggs. This is where the seeds are going to form. And the male reproductive part has the stamen and the anther. I'm videotaping, so this is the male reproductive part. So flowers can pollinate in two ways. They can self-pollinate, where you take the pollen from the male, okay, and you put it onto the female reproductive part. That's one way that flower could pollinate. Another way is if you had two, okay? If you had two different plants. So let's say I have these two different plants here. I took the pollen from plant 2 and I put it on the female reproductive part of plant 1. We call that cross-pollination. So by cross-pollinated, Mendel was able to select which plants he wanted to control. So with pea plants, if he just wanted if he wanted to cross-pollinate, what he would do is he would take some scissors and he'd cut off the male reproductive parts. So that way he could control which ones were pollinators. So he could control how pollen was transmitted. And in the book, you'll see that he actually uses a paintbrush to dab pollen on one plant and bring it over to plant number 1. So here's his experiment. He took true breeding purple pea plants and he crossed it with true breeding purple. And he always got 100% purple purebred pea plants. For the other parent, he made sure that parent was also 100% white flowered purebred pea plant. Then he's going to take this purple pea plant and cross it with this white pea plant. So he took the purple offspring and crossed it with the white offspring. And he noticed something weird. The white trait disappeared. The white flowered pea plant disappeared. Everyone in that first generation, okay, was purple. He was like, where did the white go? So then he took 2 plants from this hybrid and he cross-pollinated them. And he ended up with 75% of the offspring purple and 25% white. The white trait reappeared. And he's like, what? And because Gregor-Mendel, okay, I didn't tell you this earlier, but not only did he suffer from test anxiety, but he was also a little bit OCD, very meticulous with his data. He wrote down everything. He wrote down how many pea plants were purple, how many were white. And so he's got notebooks upon notebooks of data. But every time he did this experiment, it was always in a 3-to-1 ratio in the second generation. So here are the parents. Holy moly, sorry, I'm getting emails here. Purebred purple crossed with purebred white, and we get hybrids that are purple. And then he cross or self-fertilized them, and we get that 3-to-1 ratio. It's purple, 3 purples to 1 white. And he did this with other traits in pea plants. See, pea plants are not just purple flowered and white flowered. They can be tall or short. They can be yellow seed or green seed. They can be round seed or wrinkle seed. There's like 7 traits that you can easily observe in a pea plant. So let's just take a look at tall. You took true breeding pea plant for regular height, in this case tall, and true breeding for short height, short. Crossed the 2 plants. That first generation, all of them were tall. Short disappeared. Then he self-pollinated 2 pea plants from this hybrid group. Okay, and he ended up again with that 3-to-1 ratio, 75% tall and 25% short. That trait that disappeared in the first generation reappeared. He's like, what is going on here? So his conclusion was that each plant must have 2 factors that control the trait. Okay, so here's my purebred purple, and let's use letters to show that it is purebred. So if you are purebred purple, we're going to call you big R, big R. And if you are purebred white, we're going to call you little r, little r. And notice that, when we talked about meiosis, you get half your DNA from your parents, right? You get 1 chromosome from dad and 1 chromosome from mom. And you can see that here. You get 1 letter from, we'll just say that's dad, and 1 letter from mom. So this is the first generation. These are the hybrids right here, okay? Now he took 2 hybrid plants and he set up something called a Punnett Square that we're going to discuss. But here's big R, little r, and here's the other mother, okay? Big R, little r. You can tell that they are both hybrids, the same. And when you fill in the square, 1 big R from here, 1 big R for there, 1 little r right here, 1 little r right there, 1 big R right here, 1 little r right there, and then 2 little r's for this final box. Now, if you have a big R, you are going to be purple no matter what. Big R, big R, big R, 3. In order to be white, you have to be little r, 1. There's my 3-to-1 ratio. So in his experiments, he noticed that a genetic factor, okay, these letters, he's using letters here, blocks another genetic factor, and he called this term dominant. So if you have that letter, okay, whatever letter symbolizes that trait, you're going to show that trait. The genetic factor that gets blocked by that dominant factor is called recessive. So the only way to be recessive for that trait is to have both of your letters, lowercase. So in this slide, they're using W's instead of R's. So this would be big R, big R, big R, little r, little r, little r. So that was the first thing. 2 factors that control the trait. And when organisms reproduce, each reproductive cell, egg or sperm, contributes. So you can see up here, here's the male symbol, here's the female symbol. All right, so this is just summarizing dominant versus recessive. So that's as far as we got, and then we started to read out of the book. I highly encourage reading the book, and read it carefully, paragraph by paragraph, and look at the figures. Don't just skim through it, okay? It tells a beautiful story about how a man comes to the conclusion of how traits are passed from parents to offspring. All right, so that does it for 5.1 notes. Sorry I got a little bit long here, but it's important stuff.